Texas A&M has landed another major piece to the 2026 recruiting class.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are Locked On the Texas A&M Aggies. I am your host, Matt Galatzan, publisher of Texas A&M Aggies on SI. Thank you for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And guys, some pretty exciting news out of Aggie land. Just before we recorded this show, Evan Jacobson, another elite player, has committed to the Texas A&M Aggies in the 2026 class. 4-star tight end out of the Midwest in Waukee, Iowa. I hope I pronounced that correctly. That's a bit of a tough one there for me, but I think that's correct. Ranked as number 179 player nationally, number 11 tight end, number 1 player in Iowa, according to 24/7 Sports. He picked Texas A&M over Iowa State, Notre Dame, and Stanford, among some others. And this is a big-time get for the class because, some other teams have made a surge lately in the national recruiting rankings. Notre Dame and Texas have both launched above Texas A&M in the national rankings, and it has dropped the Aggies to 5th and 3rd in the SEC. But now after this commitment, Texas A&M can gain a little bit of ground back there, and that's just from the ranking perspective. From a prospect perspective, the Aggies now get a tight end who is, thought of as more of a traditional tight end, a big frame guy. And this is from this scouting report is from Gabe Brooks, the 24/7 Sports scouting analyst for recruiting over there. He describes Jacobson as a big frame tight end prospect with ample experience in a traditional attached tight end role, strong genetics and multi-sport profile in basketball, not necessarily an above the rim type, but a high volume scorer with skill and nuance who can catch and shoot. We've all seen what basketball player tight ends can do in the past. They kind of have a different form of athleticism than some of these more traditional guys. So that's an exciting thing there. But as a pass catcher, he leaves some production to be desired there. But he has, great quickness and spatial awareness, in a small available sample size there. So that's, those are some positive things to take away. He's got a big catch radius as well, according to Gabe Brooks. And he has a knack for really operating in the middle of the field and finding the soft spots in the zone there. So that's a big time plus for Texas A&M. And Texas A&M Aggies on SI, our recruiting insider Landon Rosal was able to catch up with Jacobson and get some information from him ahead of his commitment. And it seems like Texas A&M won this battle for a few reasons. Number one, they made Jacobson a priority very early on. They were one of the first major programs to get in the mix, and they stayed consistent with them, and that was a very big factor there for Jacobson. Whether it was in-person visits, Zoom calls, building relationships with the coaching staff, A&M kept their foot on the gas the entire time, and that persistence certainly paid off. Academics were also a big part of his decision. He took his time and was vocal about wanting a school that would, kind of set him up beyond football. Stanford was a serious contender because of that. Iowa State also a major contender in that regard. And the way they, just kind of pitched their development plans and tight end usage. But in the end, A&M really gave him the best of both worlds. High-level SEC football, top-notch resources. He really connected with Elko and the staff, the vision they had for his role in the offense. And he's not just being brought in as a traditional tight end either. A&M sees him as a versatile weapon who can split out wide, create mismatches, and grow into a key piece in the passing game. And, basketball, it was also a big thing that came up in the process. A&M didn't shy away from it. They embraced the two-sport background and showed that how his skill set could translate into a matchup advantages and into the next level. So big-time win for Texas A&M. Another huge piece of this class that is still in contention to finish as the number 1 class in the 2026 cycle. So that'll be something to watch going forward. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Texas A&M next football season, kind of get into some record-by-record predictions. I'm going to have a special guest on the show for you guys to kind of help me break that stuff down. So stick with us after the break, and we'll get into that here in a minute. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game with your friends while they're on the beach getting sunburned. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the fourth quarter on an NFL Sunday, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, welcome back. I am now joined by my good friend and hardworking staff writer over there on Texas A&M Aggies on his side, Diego Saenz. Diego, Texas A&M starts camp next week. There is a lot just a lot to look forward to, a lot to be excited about. There's a lot of high expectations surrounding this team, but a lot of varying expectations as well. So what I'd like to do with you today is jump into our game-by-game predictions for this team, where we think they might finish record-wise, and then maybe project, if we have time, maybe project a little bit forward, or maybe next week when you come on, we'll get into that portion of it with the playoff and all that kind of stuff. But let's start with the regular season. I'm going to go first. We're going to talk about the non-conference first, and I'm going to go first here. But before I do that, how are you feeling about camp? Are you excited for football to get started? What's going on there?
Yeah, I'm just excited to be around football again. It's been too long. We have a little over a month until the first football game, and yeah, just getting to see more intel from the. It's been great hearing all these recruitment news and all these projections on how the team's going to work out. But I'm excited to finally see some actual film and to finally see these players in action. And yeah, I'm excited to get this all these predictions with you.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. Texas A&M's schedule is it's not the easiest in the SEC. It's not the easiest across college football. I believe it's ranked somewhere in the top 15 there nationally in terms of difficulty of schedule. It's kind of varies depending on which source you're talking to and in what you're looking at there, but it's a difficult schedule, and it doesn't just it's not just because of the SEC. It's that non-con is a little bit difficult as well, with one particular matchup in mind. But I'm gonna start here. UTSA. I think that's an easy dub for Texas A&M. No disrespect to the Roadrunners there, but I just think Mike Elko is going to have these guys ready to go week one and get a win there. Utah State, also an easy win there for Texas A&M. Taking down another fellow Aggies team there with the Utah State Aggies. And then we get into the really big one here. No question about it. The Notre Dame game looms large, Diego. And for me, and you may have a different take here, and that's fine. I think that this is going to once again be a win here for Texas A&M. I feel really good about Marcel Reed going into this environment and performing. I really like what Texas A&M has running the football. I really like the new weapons they have at wide receiver. The offensive line is going to be as good as it gets in the SEC. And for Notre Dame, they're going to be breaking in a lot of new parts. I know that they have Jeremiah Love, who's quite obviously one of the best running backs in the country, maybe the best running back in the country. And they've got some other returning talent like Jaden Greathouse on the outside is an excellent wide receiver. But they're breaking in a new quarterback as well. And I think that this is where Texas A&M has the advantage. They've got Marcel Reed on their side, who's, in my opinion, going to take a major step forward. In fact, we have a great article on our site right now with a film breakdown from a good buddy of mine, Brooks Austin, who's as good as it gets in the football industry at breaking down film of quarterbacks. But he also expects Marcel Reed to take a big step forward, and I'm in total agreement. So everything in that matchup to me is close, except the quarterback position. I expect Marcel Reed to be the difference maker there for Texas A&M and send them off to a 3-0 record. We'll go ahead and get Samford out of the way as well. I know that's right before the Texas game at the end of the season, but easy dub for the Aggies there as well. So I have the Aggies going 4-0 in non-conference. I have the Aggies starting the season 3-0, and feeling pretty good about heading into the SEC play, Diego.
Yeah, I actually agree with you in all of those four games. Obviously, Notre Dame being the biggest question mark out of those four non-conference. I guess I can go in a little more depth about each team. First, UTSA. I guess the only headline in that matchup would be Jeff Traylor. He was one of the head coaches that the Aggies were considering back when they fired Jimbo Fisher. So that might be the only storyline going into that game, and I think A&M easily handles that one. Utah State, they actually lost their best player, their running back, Rashin Faisal, to South Carolina. So we're going to talk about him later in this podcast, but that should be another easy win. And then, yeah, Notre Dame, like you said, the new quarterback with CJ Carr. I haven't watched much film on him. I don't hear anything like amazing, but we'll see how that goes. But I know everyone's talking about Jeremiah Love, and that's going to be the number one player we're going to stop. We're going to have to stop. And I know they return all their O line, and you know how last year went. We thought that we were going to take advantage of their. I'm pretty sure 50% of them were freshmen last year, and they just ran it down our throat. So I know that big O line's returning, and then like you said, Jaden Greathouse, he went off in the national championship against Ohio State, and he should have a breakout year. And yeah, they did lose. They lost six players to the NFL draft, four on defense, two on offense. Riley Leonard being the biggest loss in my opinion. So I do think that under Mike Elko for his second year, I think that the Aggies finally pull it off. And I mean, it's the first big test of the season, and hopefully Marcel Reed and the boys are ready to play.
Yeah, and I think that you make a bunch of good points there. I also think that the loss of Riley Leonard, I think, is a big piece of this as well with the Notre Dame game, because he was really the heart and soul of that offense last year, along like him and Jeremiah Love. Obviously, we're not trying to discount Jeremiah Love here, but Riley Leonard was the heart and soul of that football team last year from a leadership perspective. He really pushed them down the stretch, especially to get to that national championship. So just having to replace that and not being sure where some of these other pieces are going to fit in, and how CJ Carr is going to adjust to being thrust into a leadership role that early in the season. I get the game is in South Bend. I get that that's a very tough place to play, and that's fine. Like I'm not trying to discount any of that stuff. I just think Texas A&M is going to be a much more seasoned, balanced football team than Notre Dame is going to be. I think that they have less question marks than Notre Dame does. And to your point about Notre Dame running the football down Texas A&M's throat last year, that was a consistent issue for Texas A&M all season, last season. So I think that that's something that's going to be addressed. I think that Mike Elko calling the defense now is going to be, a major difference in that regard. Also, they've made some additions in the transfer portal. They've gotten healthy. I just think that that's going to be a much more sound, sort of less leaky unit, I guess, along the defensive front. Torian York's going to have to help with that at the linebacker position because he's one of the best in the country. He's going to have to step up. But for the most part, I think if they can focus in on Jeremiah Love, get after CJ Carr pretty early and rattle him in that game, then they're going to have a pretty damn good shot in South Bend.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they play Miami they play Miami and then they have a bye week and then they play A&M. So let's say they somehow drop the Miami game. CJ Carr is going to be coming into the season already with immense pressure. And just when let's say he drops the Miami game, there's going to be an absurd amount of pressure under CJ Carr. Contrary to what Riley Leonard went through, he was a first-year quarterback at Notre Dame, but he was already established quarterback in college football. So I think that could be a major factor come game time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Having a tough game like Miami that could, in theory, derail your season that early on before you even get to the A&M game, I think is I think that's a major factor that not a lot of people are at least from an A&M perspective, are taking into account with this matchup. Miami's a really good football team, and they're going to be physical. They've got Carson Beck now, so if they come out and they have a good showing and beat Notre Dame, Notre Dame's kind of on pins and needles for the rest of the season, because you lose one game as an independent team, and I look, I get that their schedule is not it's not like a typical Big Ten team or something like that, where they'll schedule a bunch of cream puffs. They're trying to schedule good teams and have good matchups on this schedule, because they know that being independent and all those things, they don't have an automatic qualifier, so that they can't win the Big Ten, they can't win the SEC. So you schedule a game at Miami to open things up, then you go, you have Texas A&M, and then a bunch of other Power 5 teams in here. You got Purdue, you got at Arkansas. Boise State's not going to be easy. USC is not going to be easy. At Boston College isn't going to be easy either. Then you get into the end of the season, you got Syracuse in there. So if they drop their season opener to Notre Dame, they are going to be, sort of on pins and needles and kind of having to tread lightly, because if they drop another one as an independent team, they drop 2 games, it's going to be real hard for them to make the playoff. So by my notes, we both have Texas A&M going 3-0 in the non-conference schedule. On the other side of this break, let's get into the SEC schedule, break that down a little bit. We'll have to go a little bit quicker game by game, because we got 8 games to get through instead of 4. But we'll make our way through that and sort of see where Texas A&M ends up. But in our, we're just playing a little schedule game here. We're having some fun with it. So don't crucify us in the comments if Texas A&M goes undefeated or goes 5-7. It's not our fault. We're just making predictions. But on the other side of this break, we'll get into the SEC and break that down. So stick with us. All right, Diego, it is time for SEC schedule prediction time. This is going to be a critical season for Texas A&M in the SEC, because last year they started the season 7-1. They were in great shape heading down the stretch to compete. I mean, a lot of people thought they were almost going to be a lock for the SEC title game. They had games with Georgia, with Auburn, South Carolina, all winnable games down the stretch until you got to the Texas game. And even when they got to the Texas game, despite dropping those games to Auburn and South Carolina, all they needed to do was beat the Longhorns to get into the SEC championship. Couldn't quite get that done. So now this season, the real focus for this football team will be finishing strong. And with the SEC schedule, that's going to be difficult, because it is not an easy schedule, as we talked about a little bit in the first segment. So we're going to go through here game by game and pick. I guess what we'll probably do is just trade off game by game instead of just going 4 at a time or whatever. So we'll start there. I'm going to give them a win in on September 27th against Auburn, their SEC opener. I do not believe in the Auburn Tigers. I think that Hugh Freeze is on the hot seat. Whatever buyout he might have, I just don't think that team's ready to go. I'm not convinced that Jackson Arnold is the guy. So that's an easy win for me for Texas A&M.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It'll be interesting to see Jackson Arnold wearing that Tiger uniform. But yeah, next up they have Mississippi State on October 4th. Once again, they're playing Kyle Field. This is the second game of a 3-home game stretch. Yeah, if this was a Starkville, I could see it as a trap game. But really the only thing Mississippi has coming back is they have transfer Baylor quarterback Blake Shapen. Besides that, it should be another easy win for the Aggies. So that's 5-0 for the Aggies.
Yeah, I've got them at 5-0 as well. I have them beating Mississippi State. I just don't think that program. I think they're heading in a decent direction with Jeff Lebby. I think he's a good football coach. I think he's a good offensive mind. I just don't think that they're ready to go quite yet. So that's another one. I get I get that there can be trap games in the SEC. I just don't think that's going to be one for Texas A&M. I think they win that one easily, start 5-0, and then they head to face the Florida Gators This one is in College Station, which is good because the Swamp is a very tough place to play. But the Gators have a guy named DJ Lagway, who everybody believes is a major star in the making down there in Gainesville. This one is going to be very tough. The Gators also have a extremely good offensive line. They've got some playmakers on the outside. They've got a good running back. Their defense is expected to be improved. I just think, given that this game is in College Station, it's a bit of an even matchup for me. But given the game is in College Station, I have the Aggies winning a close one here against the Gators and starting 6-0.
Yeah, this one's probably the hardest one to call for me. It's Florida's going to be coming off a 3 game stretch. I think they play Texas the week before, and I think they play LSU the week before. So they're definitely going to be off a daunting schedule. But I don't know. Marcel Reed went into the Swamp for his first ever start last season, and he did. Um, he played a great game. I know that highlight of him breaking that guy's ankle comes to mind. Um, but with 1 year under his belt, I think Marcel Reed will be prepared for this one, especially being at home. I do fear DJ Lagway. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. But being at Kyle Field, I think A&M finds a way to pull through and move on to that'd be 6-0. And
Yeah,
then yeah, I forgot I have the next game.
uh,
Arkansas. So this is the first time since what, 2012, since it hasn't been played at Jerry World. And although I loved going to the AT&T Stadium, I think we can all agree that having that game on a college campus is going to be so much better for college football. So we go to Fayetteville this year, and I do think this is going to be one of those trap games, similarly to Tennessee last season when Tennessee went down to Arkansas and the Hogs pulled off the upset. I think A&M is going to be on upset alert, but I think Mike Elko has built a strong enough culture to where this trap games won't become infamous for A&M anymore. So I think A&M will squeak by Arkansas and move on to 7-0.
okay, okay. I get that Fayetteville can be a tough place to play. And theoretically, this could be a trap game. This is going to be our first disagreement, though. I don't think this game is going to be close. I think Arkansas is going to be dog water, and I think Texas A&M is just going to run right through them. So I have the Aggies at 7-0 as well. I just don't think this one's going to be as close as you do. Then we move on to what might be the toughest game on the schedule outside of the Lone Star Showdown, the LSU Tigers. This game is in Baton Rouge, which I think is and this is no disrespect to Kyle Field. I've been very, very complimentary of how tough of a place Kyle Field is to play. It's one of the toughest in America. I've been to Baton Rouge on a handful of occasions. It's the only football stadium I've ever been to that when it is at full capacity and the crowd is roaring as loud as it can, that my bones are actually shaking inside of my body. So for me, it's the toughest place to play in America. I think LSU might have the best offense in the SEC. I'm not particularly a believer in Brian Kelly, but I think that this is going to be A&M's first stumbling block in the regular season. And I think they're going to drop to 7-1 after what's essentially also a little bit of a revenge game for LSU after blowing that lead to Texas A&M and Marcel Reed last year. So I have them dropping one to the Tigers here.
Yeah, that one's going to be a fun one to watch, especially given what happened last season. Am I allowed to go back and change a pick? Because I find it I find it very hard to see the A&M only losing one game because I'm gonna pick Texas. Spoiler alert. So I'm gonna take Florida 2 weeks ago, and I'm
Okay.
gonna have after. So this week I was doing the way too early preview for the LSU and A&M series, and looking at all the positions, I think A&M matches up really well with LSU. We return all our 3 running backs. We return our O-line, and if you look back to the game last season, LSU struggled to contain the rushing attack. We had over 250 yards on the ground, and we had 5 touchdowns. on the ground as well. And they did return Caden Durham, he was a freshman last season, but they only ran for 24 yards last season. And I understand that Death Valley is the cathedral of college football, and it's probably the most hostile environment in the sport. But we haven't won there in over 30 years. And I think if there's a team that's going to do it, it's going to be this year's Mike Elko's program. So I think A&M is going to squeeze by and barely get a win, but it might be ugly. It won't be pretty, but I think A&M finally wins in Baton Rouge.
Okay, so we both got A&M at 7-1 here. You're changing your Florida game. You think they're going to drop one to the Gators and
Yeah.
beat LSU, but we both have the Aggies here at 7-1, heading into the final third of their SEC schedule, or the final 3 games of their SEC schedule. So next up for A&M is the Missouri Tigers. This is at Missouri in Columbia. I don't believe in Missouri. I don't think that they're going to be a very good football team. I don't know who they're going to start at quarterback. I think Eli Drinkwitz is kind of turning into a little bit of a Mike Leach wannabe with his 30-team playoff idea, which I thought was absurd. I just don't think that Missouri is quite there yet. And I think that in my scenario, after dropping one to LSU, I think A&M is going to come out on fire. And really try to put it on Missouri, who they beat up a lot last year. So I've got the Aggies now moving to 8-1 after a win against the other Tigers in the SEC, or one of the other Tigers in the SEC.
I'm with you with Drinkwitz. I thought this 32-team take was horrendous. And yeah, I don't really expect much from them this year. And going to Missouri is not the biggest challenge. I think they have the smallest stadium in the SEC, and so I think the A&M got a favorable matchup here. So yeah, I'll go with you and claim a win for A&M here. And so we move on to South Carolina, which a lot of people are extremely high on. I'm personally not. I am high on Lenora Sellers, but I think they lost so much to the NFL draft that it's going to be hard to pick up where they left off last year. They also not missed. They also lost Rocket Sanders. And like I mentioned earlier, they did get the Utah State running back, which he is really good, but I think they're still they're still going through legal paperwork and all that to try to get him to be able to play this season. But yeah, Sellers, I do think is the real deal. But I think if it was, like I said in the previous podcast, if it was a one-man sport, I think the South Carolina would be the best team in the nation. But this game being at Kyle Field too, I think A&M will have last year's game on their minds, and I think A&M. I don't think it'll be that close. I think A&M wins by 10.
Okay. We're going to have another little bit of a disagreement here, but that's fine. So Diego has the Aggies at 9-1, beating South Carolina by double digits. That is a spicy one, and I like it, Diego. Yeah. I think, if this game was in Columbia, South Carolina, I would be a lot more worried about it if I was the Aggies. Not saying that they shouldn't be worried about it whatsoever. I think this is going to be a very tough game. I would 100% pick South Carolina if this game was in Columbia, because that can be a wild place to play. I've been there before, especially at night. It's a crazy environment. So, given that it's a Kyle Field, I think you kind of have the opposite effect. I think that is what gives Texas A&M the edge in this matchup. I think that South Carolina is going to have just, I said LSU might have the best offense in the SEC. If it's going to be somebody else, it might be South Carolina, because I believe in Lenora Sellers. I think he's an amazing quarterback. Nick Harbor is an absolute freakazoid of a human being. He looks like he's an alien of some kind. He's like 6'5" or 6'6" and weighs like 240 pounds and runs like 23 miles per hour. I mean, he's an absolute beast. All that said, I've been waffling back and forth with this one. So I'm kind of making my decision as we speak right now, because I didn't know what to put down. I'm going to say I'm going to say Texas A&M wins, Diego. I'm going to say Texas A&M wins. They move to 9-1, and they head into Austin.
Yeah.
With the SEC championship game on the line. Look, this part of the podcast, and we're going to kind of have to wrap it up here soon. I'd like to spend more time on it, but we're kind of running out of time here. This is going to be perhaps the most controversial part of this podcast because of the rivalry, right? People don't want to necessarily hear that I think Texas is going to beat Texas A&M. Not easily. I don't think it's going to be an easy game, but I think it's a close game until the fourth quarter. And then I just think Texas kind of pulls away. I think they're going to have the best defense in college football. I expect Arch Manning to be hitting full stride by this point. I don't see a way that Texas A&M can compete with them quite yet. And that being said, I do think that Texas is the best football team in the country. So that's not necessarily a slight against Texas A&M. But I have the Longhorns winning this game with a late touchdown to go up double digits, a lot closer than the score indicates. Real tough game, but Texas kind of pulls away late with a late score and drops the Aggies to 10-2 on the regular season. And I can't wait for the comments. But Diego, it's your turn. Do the Aggies have a shot here?
Yeah. No. As much as it's painful to say, I have to agree with you, Matt. I think it's going to be closer than what you said. I think it's going to come down to the final 4 minutes. But I still think Mike Elko is 1 year away from really competing with Texas. I think what he's building right now with the recruiting, I think they're just 1 year away. And having them at Kyle Field next year, actually, no, I think they come back to DKR next year. But yeah, I think Arch Manning and, like you said, that defense is insanely talented. And I just think it'll be too much for Marcel Reed and Colin Klein to be able to overcome. So yeah, you have them at 10. We both have them at 10-2.
Yeah, we both have them at 10-2, which would in theory make them a playoff team in the SEC. Next time Diego's on, maybe we'll dive into a little college football playoff projection. Given the fact that we both have the Aggies, it would seemingly be making the college football playoff. But we'll save that one for next week. Thank you so much for making Locked On Aggies your first listen today. For your second listen, please check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal Show on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, give Diego and I both a follow over on Texas A&M Aggies on SI. Give Diego a follow on X at Diego Saenz. And give me a follow on X at Matt Galatzan. And we will see you next time.